It was 4:55 p.m. on a Friday, the most dangerous time in corporate history. Inside the open-plan office of Aura, 50 engineers were refreshing their banking apps, waiting for the paycheck that would pay their rent. For 1,000 miles away, their CEO was posting a story from a 90-foot yacht. He captioned it, "Strategizing for Q3." He didn't mention that he had just spent the last of their salary on the rental. There is a specific pathology in Silicon Valley known as the lifestyle founder. These are not the nerds who want to build a better database. These are the salesmen who want to be Steve Jobs, but without the product and without the work ethic. They treat venture capital not as fuel for the business, but as a personal line of credit. Before we dive in, make sure to subscribe to Silicon Valley Confidential so you never miss the unfiltered reality of the industry. And tell us in the comments, which city or tech hub are you watching or operating from today? Meet Julian Thorne, the founder of Aura. He pitched it as the Uber for mental health, a platform that would use AI to connect therapists with patients in real time. It was a noble idea, but Julian didn't care about mental health. He cared about the aesthetic of being a CEO. In 18 months, he burned through $10 million. He destroyed 50 careers, and he did it all while smiling for the camera. This is the autopsy of a startup that didn't die from failure. It died from greed. To understand how the money disappeared, you have to understand how he got it in the first place. Julian was a level 5 charisma operator. He walked into the offices of Sequoia, Andreessen, and Greylock, and he didn't talk about unit economics. He didn't talk about customer acquisition costs. He talked about vibrations. He talked about shifting the paradigm. He used words that meant nothing, but sounded expensive. We're not building an app. We are building a digital sanctuary. The market isn't $1 billion. The market is happiness itself. The investors ate it up. It was 2021. Interest rates were zero. Money was free, and everyone was looking for the next unicorn. They wired him $10 million. The Series A. The moment that money hit the corporate Chase account, the clock started ticking. Most founders would celebrate with a nice dinner and then get back to work. Julian disappeared for 3 weeks. He called it a global brand awareness tour. He told the team he was meeting with strategic partners in Europe. In reality, he was shopping. When he finally came back to the office, he didn't come alone. He brought a chief brand officer, a DJ he met in Mykonos named Kale, and he brought a new wardrobe. He walked into the office wearing a Loro Piana Vicuña wool coat. Retail price, $22,000. He walked past the engineers who were coding on 3-year-old monitors, and he went straight to his office to book a massage. The first thing Julian did with the Series A money wasn't hiring more engineers. It wasn't marketing. It was the headquarters upgrade. He declared that the current office had bad energy. He broke the lease, costing the company $50,000 in penalties, and moved them into a 10,000 square foot loft in the Arts District. Rent, $45,000 a month. He spent $80,000 on furniture. Not desks, lounge furniture, velvet sofas, a vintage arcade machine, a meditation yurt in the middle of the sales floor. But the furniture wasn't enough. Julian wanted culture. He flew in Alec Monopoly, the artist famous for painting cartoon bankers holding bags of cash, to do a custom mural on the north wall. The invoice was $100,000 for a painting of Mr. Monopoly running away with money. The irony was lost on everyone but the accountants. Julian justified it in the company's Slack. This isn't decoration, guys. It's a mindset. We need to see the bag to secure the bag. It's visual programming for success. He then hired a full-time office experience manager, whose only job was to make sure the fridge was stocked with $20 organic smoothies and that the playlist was curated. Elena was the CFO. She was the only adult in the room. She had been in the valley since the dot-com crash. She knew what burning cash looked like. She tried to show Julian the burn rate, the speed at which the company was dying. We are spending $400,000 a month. We have 18 months of runway. If we hire 5 more people, we have 12 months. Julian didn't want to hear it. You're thinking too small, Elena, he told her. We need to look successful to be successful. It's about signaling. To Julian, the burn rate wasn't a warning. It was a score. The more he spent, the more important he felt. 6 months in, the product was broken. The app, Aura, was crashing every time more than 500 people tried to log in. The backend was held together by duct tape and prayers. The engineering team was working 80-hour weeks. They were sleeping under their desks in the meditation yurt. They needed leadership. They needed the CEO to make hard decisions about the roadmap. But Julian was gone. He wasn't in the office. He was networking. He was attending founders' circles in Napa Valley. He was at thought leadership retreats in Tulum. He expensed everything. He justified it as business development. He told the team on Slack, "I'm out here securing the partnerships that will take us to the moon. Hold down the fort." The team started to notice the little things. First, the free lunches stopped being catered by the high-end bistro and started being Domino's. Then, the office experience manager was quietly let go. Then, the cold brew tap ran dry and wasn't refilled. Elena, the CFO, stopped coming to the Friday all-hands meetings. She just stayed in her office with the door closed. Elena saw the charges that broke the camel's back. It wasn't just the travel. It was the consulting fees. Julian had started wiring money, 10,000 here, 15,000 there, to a shell company registered in Delaware. The company was called JT Ventures, Julian Thorne Ventures. He wasn't just wasting the money. He was siphoning it. He walked in on a Tuesday. The tension in the room was thick enough to choke on. He didn't ask about the crashing servers. He didn't ask about the AWS bill. He stood on top of a desk and clapped his hands. "Listen up, everyone. Great news. I've just booked the corporate retreat. We're going to Cabo." The room went silent. Marcus raised his hand. "Julian, we haven't shipped the Android update yet. We can't go to Cabo." Julian laughed. A cold, dismissive laugh. "Marcus, you have a scarcity mindset. We're celebrating. We're a $10 million company." That afternoon, the CFO quit. She didn't send a goodbye email. She didn't give 2 weeks' notice. She just walked out. That should have been the air raid siren. That should have been the moment everyone ran for the exits. But they didn't, because the paycheck still cleared that Friday. They didn't know it was the last one they would ever see. 2 weeks after the CFO walked out, Julian didn't panic. He doubled down. He told the team he was flying to the Mediterranean summit to close a Series B round. He claimed he was meeting with Saudi sovereign wealth funds, the biggest money in the world, he called it. Back in San Francisco, the engineers rolled their eyes. They thought it was a lie. They thought he was just partying. They were only half wrong. He was partying, and he wasn't alone. He had flown out 3 Instagram models, a personal videographer, and his brand DJ, Kale. But he was also pitching, just not for Aura. Julian knew the company was dead. He knew the math. He knew the runway was gone. Most founders would be frantic, trying to save the ship. But Julian was a parasite. And when the host body starts dying, the parasite doesn't try to cure it. It looked for a new host. On the deck of the Vanguard, a sleek, 90-foot mega-yacht owned by a crypto whale named 0x Baron, Julian wasn't trying to save 50 jobs in San Francisco. Amidst the spray of champagne, he was talking to a representative of a decentralized hedge fund based in Dubai. Shadowy money. The kind of money that doesn't ask for audits, it asks for hype. The mental health play is Web 2. It's legacy. The real alpha is in tokenizing human emotion, putting vibes on the blockchain. The contact smiled. He didn't care about the product. He cared that Julian had access to Silicon Valley deal flow. Julian posted his Instagram photo, manifesting abundance, moments after shaking hands on a deal that wouldn't pay a single cent to his employees. He had secured his next lifeboat while his crew was drowning. While Julian was manifesting abundance, his lead engineer, Marcus, was manifesting a panic attack. Marcus was staring at a terminal window, bleeding red error messages. The server costs had hit credit limits. AWS was threatening to terminate the instances. The email came through at 2:15 a.m. It wasn't from Julian. It was from Gusto, the payroll provider. Subject: automated notice. Payroll suspended. Reason: NSF, non-sufficient funds. There is no scarier acronym in business than NSF. It separates the struggling startups from the crime scenes. It means the well isn't just low, it's dry. Marcus called Julian, straight to voicemail. He called Kale, the brand DJ, straight to voicemail. He checked Slack. Julian's status was set to a palm tree emoji. Friday, 9 a.m. The team came in expecting a paycheck. Rent was due on Sunday. The mood was tense, but hopeful. They thought the Series B was coming. Then the phone started buzzing, like popcorn popping, one by one. Did you get the deposit? No, me neither. A murmur went through the room, a cold wave of realization. People started logging into their bank apps. Refreshing, nothing. For the junior developers, this was an inconvenience. For the senior engineers with mortgages in the Bay Area, this was a catastrophe. Marcus had to be the one to say it. Guys, I tried to reach Julian. I think the account is empty. The room exploded. The illusion of the cool startup vanished instantly. The mural of Mr. Monopoly running with money bags suddenly didn't look like visual programming. It looked like a mockery. They flooded Julian's phone. Hundreds of messages. Finally, at 11 a.m., a reply appeared in the general channel. It wasn't an apology. It was a masterpiece of corporate gaslighting. Team, we are experiencing a minor liquidity hiccup due to international wire delays with the new partners in UAE. Please remain calm. The fund will clear by Monday. Keep building. He was lying. He wasn't waiting on a wire. He was waiting for his flight to land in Dubai. Monday came. The money didn't, but the consequences did. When the engineers tried to swipe into the building, the readers flashed red. Access denied. They looked through the glass doors. Inside, they saw men in blue coveralls moving the velvet sofas. They were stripping the good vibes only neon sign off the wall. They weren't movers. They were liquidators. The landlord hadn't been paid in 3 months. While Julian was expensing consulting fees, he was stiffing the rent. The employees stood on the sidewalk, locked out of their jobs, locked out of their personal belongings. Their laptops, their notebooks, their hoodies, all trapped behind glass, now the property of the landlord to settle the debt. It was the perfect metaphor for Julian's tenure. He had locked them out of the upside, drained the value, and left them standing in the cold. Aura had evaporated. Tuesday, Julian finally agreed to a call. He didn't do it in person. He did it over Zoom. He was still on the boat. You could hear the wind in his microphone. He didn't look sorry. He looked annoyed that his vacation was being interrupted by poor people. Look, guys, the macroeconomic climate shifted. The risk appetite just isn't there. We swung for the fences and we missed. That's the startup game. You should be proud of what we built. Marcus unmuted himself. Julian, you spent $40,000 on a boat rental last week. We saw the Instagram. Julian didn't flinch. That was a marketing expense, Marcus. It was for the brand. We don't have a brand. Marcus shouted. We don't even have a payroll. Julian sighed, took a sip of his drink, and looked at the camera. I'm terminating the call. I have to hop on a call with legal. Best of luck in your next endeavors. Click. Here's the part that drives people crazy. The employees wanted justice. They wanted Julian in handcuffs. They wanted an episode of American Greed. Some filed complaints with the Department of Labor. Some contacted the district attorney. But when the forensic accountants looked at the books, they hit a wall. Under the law, this is called the business judgment rule. It protects CEOs from being sued for making stupid decisions, as long as they can claim they thought it would help the company. To prove criminal fraud, the prosecutor has to prove intent. They have to prove Julian knew the company was dead and lied to steal money. But Julian didn't steal the money. He wasted it. He was unethical. He was narcissistic. He was a liar. But was he a criminal? Technically, no. See, Julian didn't wire the money to a personal checking account. That would be embezzlement. He wired it to JT Ventures for consulting services. He had a contract signed by himself that authorized these payments. Was the consulting worth it? Obviously not. But being bad at your job isn't a crime. Being overpaid isn't a crime. Wasting investor money on brand awareness trips to Ibiza is stupid. But in the eyes of the law, it's a business decision. It was just startup failure. The Alec Monopoly painting? Office decor asset. The yacht? Investor relations event. The private jet? Executive travel. He had built a fortress of plausibility. He hid his theft inside the bloated corpse of corporate expenses. Julian's defense was simple. I wasn't stealing. I was trying to project success to raise more money. I failed. Oops. But what about the investors? Sequoia, Greylock, the people who wrote the $10 million check. Surely they would want blood? They had the lawyers. They had the power. But they did nothing. Why? Because in Silicon Valley, suing a founder is a death sentence for a VC firm. In venture capital, there is a rule: lemons ripen early. VCs expect 90% of their companies to fail. If a top-tier firm like Sequoia or Andreessen sues a founder, it sends a terrible signal to the market. It screams, we are bad at picking founders. We didn't do our due diligence. It embarrasses them. To a VC fund with billions under management, a $10 million loss is a rounding error. It's the cost of doing business. They wrote it off as a tax loss. They deleted Aura from their website portfolio page. They washed their hands of it. They didn't sue him. They didn't blacklist him. They just ignored him, which meant Julian's record was clean. No criminal charges, no civil judgments. Just a failed startup on his LinkedIn. And in the Valley, a failure is just a lesson. 6 months later, the employees were still fighting for their back pay. And Julian? Julian was walking onto a stage at a Future of Finance conference in Miami. He had a new tan, a new buzzword, and a new pitch deck. Remember that meeting on the yacht in Ibiza? The networking? It paid off. On that boat, Julian met a bored cousin of a royal family looking to diversify into Web3. Julian didn't have a product, but he had a story. He spun the failure of Aura not as incompetence, but as market timing. He stood on that stage, looked the audience in the eye, and said, I built a $10 million company in San Francisco. I learned the hard lessons. I learned that the old infrastructure is broken. That's why we're building the future, DeFi, decentralized finance. To the outsider, a bankruptcy looks like failure. To the wealthy amateur, it looks like experience. He didn't raise $10 million this time. He raised 25. Pre-seed. Valuation, $100 million. In the casino of Silicon Valley, the house doesn't always win. But the guys with the vicuña coats, they never lose. They just fail upwards. They leave behind a trail of unpaid rent, broken leases, and shattered careers. And then they change their LinkedIn bio to serial entrepreneur. If this story made your blood boil, hit the like button so the algorithm exposes more of these grifters. And let us know in the comments. Have you ever worked for a lifestyle founder? We want to hear your story.